My sister sent me a photo of an empty school bus at 6:47 on a Tuesday morning, and I looked at it for maybe 3 seconds before switching back to my coffee. That's the detail I'll carry until whatever end finds me. 3 seconds. The bus was parked at an angle I didn't recognize, halfway onto a curb on Millbrook Road, its stop sign still extended like a frozen arm. No kids, no driver visible. The emergency exit at the rear hung open. I remember thinking Jenna was being dramatic again. She taught 4th grade at Millbrook Elementary and had a habit of texting me mundane frustrations dressed up as emergencies. Flat tire photos captioned, "Pray for me." Staff meeting agendas with skull emojis. I was 23 years old, 11 months into dropping out of community college, working the opening shift at a breakfast cafe that didn't need me. And I had learned across my entire life that Jenna handled things. That was the architecture of our relationship. She handled. I followed. She sent. I reacted, eventually, when I got around to it. I typed back, "LOL, did someone steal the kids?" She never replied. I want to be precise about the next 2 hours because I've heard other people's versions of that morning, and most of them rewrite themselves into heroes. They noticed something. They felt something. Some low hum in the animal brain that said, "Move." I didn't feel anything. I poured a latte for a man named Gerald, who came in every Tuesday and Thursday. And I burned the milk because I always burn the milk. And Gerald said close enough, the way he always did. I wiped tables. I checked my phone twice more, saw no reply from Jenna, and thought nothing. The cafe had 6 customers by 7:30. A couple with a toddler splitting a scone. 2 women with laptops, Gerald, a teenager doing homework with earbuds in. At 8:15, the teenager stood up and said, "Holy shit," looking at his phone, and one of the laptop women shushed him, and he said it again louder. And I remember being annoyed. At 8:22, my manager Darcy came out of the back with her own phone pressed to her ear and her face arranged in a way I'd never seen on a living person. Not frightened exactly, but simplified, like everything non-essential had been stripped out of her expression. "Lock the front door," she said. I didn't move. "Maya, lock the front door right now." I was closer to the door than she was. That's the only reason she told me. I walked to it and turned the deadbolt, and through the glass I watched a woman I vaguely recognized from the nail salon 2 doors down running, not jogging, not hurrying, running, across the parking lot toward her car. She was carrying 1 shoe. Behind her, maybe 40 yards back, a man followed at a pace that looked wrong. Not faster or slower than a walk, just wrong in its mechanics. His shoulders didn't move with his stride. His head stayed fixed forward like something had locked his neck. "What is that?" I said. Nobody answered me. Everyone was on their phones. The toddler was crying. Gerald had stood up and was holding his coffee cup like a weapon. I texted Jenna. "Are you okay?" I texted Jenna. "Call me." I texted Jenna. "Jenna, please." I called her, straight to voicemail, not ringing, not declining, just the immediate redirect to her recorded voice saying, "Hi, you've reached Jenna, leave me something good." I called again, same thing. I called our mother, who picked up on the first ring and said, "I can't reach your sister." And her voice was the second worst thing I heard that morning. The worst was the sound that came from outside 11 minutes later. I don't have language for it yet. I'm not sure I will. What I knew by 8:40 a.m., something had happened in our town. What I didn't know, what took me too long to understand, was that Jenna's photo hadn't been a complaint. It had been the last thing she thought I should see. Darcy made us move away from the windows. She was 54, had managed the cafe for 9 years, and possessed the specific authority of a woman who'd never once raised her voice because she'd never needed to. She pointed at the back hallway, and we went. All 8 of us, Gerald, the couple with the toddler, the 2 women, the teenager, Darcy and me, pressed into the corridor between the kitchen and the storage room. It smelled like cardboard, and the lavender cleaner Darcy bought in bulk. "My husband's a deputy," Darcy said. "He's not answering either. Nobody panic." Gerald said, "I'm not panicking. I'd like information." "Same thing I have. Phone says there's some kind of incident, multiple locations. They're saying stay inside." Darcy looked at her screen again. "Civil emergency alert just came through. See? Stay indoors, lock doors, do not approach anyone displaying erratic behavior." The teenager, I learned his name was Cole, laughed once, sharp and wrong. "Erratic behavior? I just watched a video of a guy eating someone's arm in a Kroger parking lot in Raleigh. That's 3 hours from here." "Put that away," one of the laptop women said. She'd positioned herself between Cole's phone and the couple's toddler, whose name was B. B had stopped crying and was now chewing on her mother's jacket zipper with a focus that seemed almost enviable. "My daughter's at school," the other laptop woman said. Her voice was flat in a way I recognized from myself, the voice of someone still fully convinced this would be temporary. "Millbrook Elementary. I need to go get her." My blood went cold. Millbrook Elementary. Jenna's school. The bus in the photo, that had been on the road to Millbrook. "What's your name?" I asked her. "Patricia. My sister teaches there. 4th grade, Jenna Reeves." Patricia stared at me. "Ms. Reeves is my daughter's teacher." Of all the things that had happened in the last 30 minutes, this collision was the one that made me feel the ground shift. Not coincidence, just small-town geometry. Of course, Patricia's daughter was in Jenna's class. There were only 3 4th-grade sections. "We need to go there," I said. Darcy shook her head. "Nobody's going anywhere. Alert says stay put." My sister isn't answering her phone. She sent me a weird photo this morning. A bus, empty, stopped in the middle of the road. I think something happened at the school. Patricia was already reaching for her bag. Her partner, the other laptop woman, whose name was Sue Jin, grabbed her wrist. "Trish, we don't know what's out there." "My daughter is out there." I understood Patricia completely in that moment. But I need to be honest about what I was feeling, because honesty is the only thing I have left that I can offer anyone, including myself. I wasn't thinking about Jenna the way Patricia was thinking about her daughter. Patricia's fear was a mother's fear. Primal, selfless, a biological scream. Mine was something smaller and uglier. Mine was guilt. Because I'd seen the photo, I'd had 2 hours, and I'd made a latte for Gerald and wiped tables and done nothing. "I'm going," I said. "You can come or not." Gerald set his coffee cup on a shelf between bottles of vanilla syrup. "How far is the school?" "1.5 miles, maybe less." "I'll drive you," he said. "My truck's right outside." Darcy said, "Gerald, you're 71 years old. And my truck has 4-wheel drive and a toolbox in the bed. Seems relevant." He looked at me. "You ready, or do you need a minute?" I didn't need a minute. I needed to have needed one 2 hours ago. Patricia stood up and Sujin stood with her. And Cole pocketed his phone and said, "I'm not staying here alone." And the couple with B looked at each other in a conversation that happened entirely in their eyes, and the mother said, "We're staying. B can't. We're staying." Darcy locked the back door behind us. Through the glass, she looked like someone watching a lifeboat leave from a stable deck, uncertain which side was making the mistake. Gerald's truck was a dark blue Ford F-150 with a cracked dashboard and a Pine air freshener so old it had petrified. I sat in the front. Patricia, Sujin, and Cole packed into the back seat. Gerald started the engine on the first try and backed out of his spot like it was any Tuesday. And I wanted to scream at him to go faster, but the parking lot answered for me. 3 cars were abandoned at odd angles near the lot's exit. Doors open, engines off. One had its windshield cracked in a starburst pattern from the inside. No people visible. Gerald navigated around them slowly, his hand steady on the wheel, and pulled onto Carver Street, heading east toward Millbrook Road. The first 2 blocks looked almost normal. Closed shops, empty sidewalks. A dog sitting in the middle of the road who moved when Gerald honked. Then we hit the intersection at Carver and Pine, and normal ended. A minivan had struck a fire hydrant on the northeast corner. Water jetted upward in a white column, flooding the intersection with 3 inches of sheeting flow. On the sidewalk beyond it, a woman sat on the curb holding what appeared to be a towel against her forearm. The towel was soaked red. A man knelt beside her, talking into his phone. They looked up as we passed, and the woman's face was white. Not pale, but white, like someone had pulled a plug and drained her. "Don't stop," Patricia said from the back. It wasn't cruel. It was arithmetic. Every minute between her and her daughter was a minute she was calculating against. Gerald didn't stop, none of us argued. I think about that woman every day. We turned onto Millbrook Road, and I saw the bus. The same one from Jenna's photo, I was sure, because the angle of its parking matched what she'd captured. Still crooked on the curb. Stop sign still out. Emergency exit still open. But now, 7 minutes into our drive, something had changed. The front windshield was smeared on the inside with a dark substance I refused to name, and the driver's side window was gone entirely. Not cracked, not broken out, but missing, as if someone had removed it with care. "Jesus Christ," Cole said. "Don't look at it," Sujin said. "I'm looking at it." I was looking at it too. I was looking at the bus that my sister had photographed 2.5 hours ago, when it had been simply empty. And I was understanding with a sick, slow clarity that she had seen this begin. Before the windshield, before the window vanished. She had seen the bus parked wrong, and the children missing. And she had sent me the only message she could. A picture worth a single question. Why is this bus empty? And I had typed back, LOL, did someone steal the kids? Gerald accelerated past the bus. Millbrook Road stretched ahead for another half-mile before the school's driveway. The road was empty except for a single cyclist lying on his side near the center line. He wasn't moving. His bicycle wheel still spun in a lazy rotation. "Is he?" I started. "Don't stop," Patricia said again. Gerald didn't stop. But as we passed, I looked down through my window and saw the cyclist's head turn. Not his body, his head, rotating on his neck to track our passing like a mounted camera on a slow motor. His eyes were open and focused, and completely absent of anything I'd call human recognition. "He's one of them," Cole said. "Oh my God, he's one of them." "One of what?" Gerald said, his first words since we'd left. "Them. You saw the videos. The people who—" "I don't watch videos," Gerald said. "Tell me what you know. Plainly." Cole swallowed. "People are attacking people. Biting. not stopping. The ones who get bitten get back up and do the same. It started, I don't know, somewhere else. It doesn't matter. It's here now. The school appeared ahead, its flat brick facade and green metal roof visible behind a row of pin oaks. The parking lot was visible from the road. It was full of cars. That seemed promising until I realized. Full of cars meant full of parents who'd had the same idea as Patricia. Full of cars might mean full of answers, or full of cars might mean full of people who'd arrived too late. Gerald turned into the drive. The parking lot told a story if you read it correctly, and I have since taught myself to read places like text. 30-some cars clustered near the main entrance. Most were parked properly. Parents who'd arrived before whatever happened, who'd still believed in lines and lanes. But maybe 8 or 9 were at wild angles near the building's front doors, pulled onto sidewalks, one with its front end against the flagpole. These were the second wave, the panicked arrivals. Nobody was outside. Gerald parked the truck in the fire lane near the gym entrance, the side of the building closest to us, and killed the engine. Silence entered the cab like a change in pressure. "Where's the main office?" Patricia asked me. "Front entrance, left side, but we should—" "I'm going." She had her hand on the door handle. "Patricia?" Soo-Jin's voice was careful. "We should check if the doors are even unlocked. We should look before—" "Every second we sit here talking, Lily is inside. Lily is 7. She doesn't understand what's happening. I'm going." I understood her desperation. I shared its shape, if not its intensity. But something in the silence of that parking lot made my skin contract. 30 cars, no people, no sound from the building, no fire alarm, no intercom, no children's voices. A school that quiet is a school that's either been evacuated or together, Gerald said. We go together. We stay together. We do not separate. I spent 26 years in plant maintenance at Y12 in Oak Ridge. I've done lockdown drills in buildings with actual classified material. You stay together or you die apart. Choose. Everyone chose together. We exited the truck. Cole took a tire iron from Gerald's toolbox without asking. And Gerald looked at it and at Cole and nodded once. Soo-Jin picked up a chunk of broken brick from the landscaping border. Patricia carried nothing. I had my phone in the apron I'd never removed, still smelling of burnt milk. The gym entrance was a set of double doors with narrow vertical windows reinforced with wire mesh. I pressed my face against the glass. The gymnasium was dark, overhead lights off. But the emergency exit signs cast a red glow that showed me the shape of the space. Basketball court. Bleachers folded against the wall. The floor was empty. Gerald pulled the door handle. Locked. "Front," Patricia said, already moving along the building's exterior. We followed in a loose group. Gerald first, then me, then Patricia and Soo-Jin, then Cole guarding the rear with his tire iron. The building's windows were too high to see through from ground level, designed for natural light rather than observation. As we rounded the corner toward the front entrance, I heard something that rearranged my understanding of the next several hours. Banging. Rhythmic, heavy, purposeless banging coming from inside the building. Not someone knocking to get out. Not a mechanical sound. Something hitting something else without strategy or fatigue. The sound of a body repeating a motion because the instruction to stop had been severed. Patricia stopped walking. Soo-Jin took her hand. "That doesn't mean Lily," I said, though I had no authority to make that claim. "The teachers might have them locked in classrooms. My sister would have. Jenna would have protected them." I said this because I believed it. Jenna was competent. Jenna was brave. Jenna had once chased a loose dog off the playground with nothing but her teacher voice and a clipboard. If something had entered this building, Jenna would have put children behind locked doors and stood in the hallway herself. This was not hope. This was data. 23 years of watching my sister operate. The front entrance was ahead. The glass doors were intact, but the left one stood open about 10 inches, propped by a small red backpack wedged at the base. Above the doors, the school's LED message board scrolled its permanent message. Millbrook Elementary, where every child shines. The banging was louder here, coming from somewhere to the right of the main hallway, something hitting a door maybe, hitting it and hitting it and hitting it. "Okay," Gerald said quietly. "I go first. Stay close." He went first. We stayed close. The main hallway of Millbrook Elementary was 100 feet of tile and cinder block, decorated with construction paper projects and motivational posters. Half the fluorescent panels were on. The other half flickered or had gone dark. The effect was a corridor of alternating light and shadow. And in the shadows, I could see, or thought I could see, movement at the far end. Something low to the ground, dragging. I didn't say anything. I wasn't sure. Gerald led us left, toward the main office. The door was open, the lights on inside. The reception counter was unmanned. Behind it, a desk phone lay off its cradle, emitting the flat tone of a deadline. Papers scattered. A mug of coffee overturned, its contents long since soaked into a stack of permission slips. "Okay," Patricia breathed. "Okay, classrooms. 4th grade is..." "Second floor," I said. "Rooms 201 through 206. You know the layout. I picked Jenna up here 100 times. I know where everything is." The stairwell was through a set of fire doors at the end of the east wing. To reach it, we had to pass the cafeteria, the library, and 6 first-grade classrooms. The banging was coming from the cafeteria, I was sure now. The double doors to the lunchroom had small square windows at adult height, and as we approached, Gerald slowed and rose onto his toes to look through. His face changed. "Don't look," he said. "Keep moving." Patricia didn't look. Cole didn't look. Sujin didn't look. I looked. I'm the one who looked, because I have never in my life been able to not look. And this is simultaneously my worst quality and the reason I'm still alive. Inside the cafeteria, 4 figures moved among the overturned lunch tables. They were adults. 2 women, 2 men, wearing the lanyards and khaki pants of school staff. They moved in circuits that had no logic, colliding with walls and furniture and rebounding like insects against glass. One of them was the source of the banging. A man hitting his shoulder against the interior fire exit with metronomic regularity. They were gray in a way that had nothing to do with light. Their skin looked like wet paper. None of them were Jenna. I caught up to Gerald and whispered, "Staff, 4 of them. They're in there, but they're not trying to get out. They're just moving." "Good," he said. "Means the door holds them." We passed the library, dark, door shut, and reached the first-grade wing. The classroom doors here were all closed. From behind some, I could hear sounds. A child crying softly, an adult voice murmuring reassurance, the scrape of furniture being moved. People alive, people hiding. Gerald paused at the first door that had sound behind it. He knocked twice, softly. Silence. Then a woman's voice. "Who is it?" "Civilians," Gerald said. "We're going upstairs to get to the 4th grade rooms. Are you locked in?" "Yes. We have 11 children in here. Is it safe outside?" "No," Gerald said honestly. but the front entrance is open. If you can get to the parking lot, we're not moving until someone official comes." Gerald looked at me. I saw him decide not to argue. "Understood. Stay locked. We'll come back down if we learn anything." The stairwell door was closed but unlocked. The stairs were empty. 2 flights to the second floor, concrete and metal, lit by a single, buzzing fluorescent. Our footsteps echoed like a declaration of position. At the top, another fire door led into the second-floor hallway. Gerald pushed it open slowly. The hallway was darker up here. No functioning lights at all in this section. Only the gray daylight from classroom door windows and one exit sign at the far end providing any visibility. Room 201, Room 202, Room 203. 204 is Jenna's, I said. The door to 204 was closed. A piece of paper was taped to the outside at eye level. I stepped closer to read it in the dim light. In Jenna's handwriting, neat and deliberate. 16 students safe in library basement. Key under fire extinguisher. J left 7:20 a.m. I'm sorry. J. I read the note 3 times. Each reading rearranged its meaning inside me. J left 7:20 a.m. She'd left. Before the photo. No. The photo timestamp was 6:47. She'd seen the bus, sent me the picture, and then what? Come to school, moved 16 children to the library basement, locked them in, left instructions, and then left. Gone. Voluntarily departed at 7:20, 37 minutes before the world's infrastructure started collapsing in real time. I'm sorry. Sorry for what? 16 kids, Patricia said, reading over my shoulder. Is Lily? She doesn't name them. We have to go to the library basement. There's a basement under the library? Cole asked. Media storage, I said. It's basically a closet with shelves. They keep old AV equipment down there. There's a staircase behind the reference section. My voice was steady. I'm noting this because it surprises me in retrospect. I just learned that my sister, the person I'd driven across town to reach, wasn't here, had deliberately left, had known what was coming, had done her job, had saved her students, and had then chosen to go somewhere that wasn't toward me. She hadn't called. She hadn't come to the cafe. She'd sent me a photo and then performed her duty and then vanished. Maya. Sue Jin was watching my face. We can figure out your sister after. The kids first. The kids first, I repeated. And I meant it. But underneath the words, something cold was settling into the space where my urgency had been. A new question replacing the old one. The old question had been, is Jenna safe? The new question was, did Jenna leave me behind on purpose? We went back downstairs. Gerald led again. The cafeteria door held. I could still hear the banging as we passed, and we reached the library. Its door was closed but unlocked. Inside, the space was dark and silent, shelves looming in the gray window light. The reference section was in the back left corner. Behind a shelf of encyclopedias that no one had used in a decade, a narrow door I'd never noticed in all my pickups of Jenna opened onto a tight staircase. Key under fire extinguisher, I said. The fire extinguisher was mounted on the wall beside the door. I reached beneath it, felt along the mounting bracket, and found a small silver key taped to the metal. The basement door at the bottom of the stairs was solid, not glass, not windowed, locked. I put the key in and turned it, and before I could push the door open, a voice from inside said, "Password." A child's voice, serious and rigid with fear. "There's no password," I said. "My name is Maya. I'm Ms. Reeves' sister. She left a note telling me where you are." Silence. then whispering, several small voices conferring. Miss Reeves said someone would come and they'd know the name of her cat. I almost laughed. Almost. Ptolemy, I said. His name is Ptolemy. He's orange and he has one eye. The sound of something heavy being dragged away from the door. Then it opened inward, and I saw them. 16 children between the ages of 8 and 10, arranged on the floor of a narrow concrete room lit by a single LED lantern. They'd pushed a metal shelving unit against the door. Their faces were tear-streaked but alert. They'd been quiet, impossibly quiet for children, and I realized Jenna must have told them their lives depended on silence. She'd drilled that into them in the minutes she'd had. A girl in the front with red hair and a gap-toothed expression said, "Is it over?" "Not yet," Patricia said, pushing past me. Lily?" From the back of the group, a small hand rose. "Mom?" Patricia's entire body buckled forward. She was across the room in 2 strides, on her knees, pulling a dark-haired girl into her arms, with a sound I can only describe as structural, something load-bearing inside her finally releasing its weight. I watched them. I was glad. I was glad for Patricia and Lily, and for all 16 of these children who were alive, because my sister was competent and brave and organized. And I was standing in the doorway of my sister's last known location, holding the key she'd left me, reading the note she'd taped to a door at 7:20 a.m. And understanding. Not yet fully, but in the way a fracture announces itself before the bone separates, that Jenna had not been asking me to come save her. She'd been saying goodbye. Gerald made the decision for us, which was fine because no one else could. 16 children, 5 adults, 1 truck. The math was impossible, so he didn't try to solve it with the truck alone. He went back out to the parking lot, alone, refusing company, saying, "I'm 71 and fast enough," and returned 7 minutes later, driving a school activities van he'd found unlocked behind the gymnasium. Keys had been in the visor. "Van holds 20 with the seats in," he said through the window. "Kids in the van. Adults split between the van and the truck. We go somewhere defensible and we stay there until this resolves." "Where?" Soo-Jin asked. Gerald looked at me. I don't know why. Maybe because I was the only one not holding a child or shaking. I was cold inside, that new coldness, and it must have read as calm. "The fire station on Route 7, I said. "It's a mile north. Block walls, metal doors. Trucks might still be there. If the crews responded to something, they'd have left at least 1 engine behind." "Works," Gerald said. We loaded the children into the van like a field trip from a nightmare. They were so quiet. Jenna had broken something in them with her seriousness, or maybe saved them by breaking it. They filed in pairs, holding hands, eyes enormous. 2 of them were crying silently. The rest had the focused stillness of prey animals. Cole climbed into the van's driver's seat because he was the only other person besides Gerald who could drive, and I realized he couldn't be older than 16. He'd had his license for less than a year, probably. "You okay to drive?" I asked him. "No," he said. "But there's no option where I'm not driving, so." Fair. Patricia rode in the van with Lily. Soo-Jin chose the van too, staying with Patricia, always. Gerald took the truck. I sat in the truck's passenger seat because I couldn't bring myself to be in the van with those children. Not because I didn't care about them, because every one of them was a living testament to my sister's competence and my own failure, and their rescued faces were a mirror I couldn't look at for that long. We pulled out of the parking lot at 9:38 a.m., less than an hour since I'd left the cafe. The world had been ending for maybe 3 hours total, depending on where you started counting, and already the town looked post-human, not destroyed. The buildings were fine, the traffic lights still worked where they were visible, but emptied. Doors open, cars stopped at angles, a bicycle in the middle of an intersection, the vocabulary of interruption written everywhere. Route 7 took us past the gas station on Oak Street, and that's where we picked up the first one. A man standing at pump 3, holding the nozzle, staring at us. Not infected. I knew that immediately because his eyes tracked us with intelligence, with need, with the specific desperation of a person who's just realized they're alone and doesn't want to be. Gerald slowed. The man jogged toward us. Mid-30s, work boots, high-visibility vest. Construction or utility. Hey, where are you going? Can I? Gerald rolled down his window. Fire station on Route 7. Follow us or get in the bed. The man looked at his car, presumably out of gas, or wouldn't start, and climbed into the truck bed without another word. His name, I'd learn later, was Dennis. He was a lineman for the power company. He'd been on his way to a job site when his truck died and his phone stopped connecting, and a woman at the gas station's register had started twitching in a way that made him leave without his change. Dennis was the first. By the time we reached the fire station 8 minutes later, there were 4 more people in the truck bed and a Hyundai following the van with 2 women inside who'd simply started tailing us when they saw a convoy with purpose. People, I learned, will follow anything that looks like it knows where it's going. Even if it doesn't. Even if the person at the front of the line is a 23-year-old cafe worker whose only qualification is that her sister's competence left a trail she could follow. The fire station on Route 7 was a 2-bay volunteer house, Engine Company 14, and it was empty of personnel. One engine remained in the left bay, red and massive and useless to us except as a wall if we needed to block the doors. The right bay was empty. The second truck presumably out on a call it would never return from. Gerald backed his truck into the right bay, and Cole pulled the van alongside the engine, and we closed the bay doors with the manual chain. And for the first time since leaving the cafe, we were enclosed in something that felt like it was built to withstand. 23 people, that was our number. 16 children, 7 adults. Gerald, me, Cole, Patricia, Sujin, Dennis the lineman, and a woman named Yolanda, who'd been one of the Hyundai followers and who turned out to be a veterinary technician, which seemed useless until much later when it wasn't. The other Hyundai woman, Yolanda's co-worker, whose name I never learned, took one look at the children and the windowless bay and said, "I'm going to find my family." And Yolanda said, "Min, please don't." And Min said, "I have to," and took the Hyundai and left. We never saw her again. I don't know what happened to her. I carry that not knowing the way you carry a coin in your pocket. Always there, always felt, never examined. The fire station had a kitchen, a bunk room with 4 cots, 2 bathrooms, a communications room with a radio that produced only static, and a storage area with bottled water and protein bars. Not enough for 23 people for more than a day. But for now, it was shelter and walls and a door that locked. I gathered the children in the bunk room. They sat on the cots and the floor, and I stood in front of them and did something I'd never done in my life. I took charge. My name is Maya. I'm Ms. Reeves' sister. She sent me to find you and bring you somewhere safe. And that's what I did. You're safe now. This was a lie. Not the part about being her sister or finding them, but the part about being safe. I didn't know if we were safe. I didn't know anything. But I said it because Jenna would have said it. And Jenna's word meant more to these children than mine ever could. And I was borrowing her authority like a coat that didn't fit me. "I want my mom," said a boy in the middle row. I know, I said. We're going to figure that out. Right now, I need everyone to eat something and drink some water and stay in this room. Can you do that for me? 16 nods. Some of them were already reaching for the protein bars Sujin was distributing. I left the bunk room and found Gerald in the kitchen, running water into a pot. He looked at me over his shoulder. You did well in there, he said. I lied to them. You told them what they needed to hear. That's not the same as lying. It is, though. He set the pot on the counter and turned to face me fully. Your sister, you said she left at 7:20. Where do you think she went? I'd been asking myself this since reading the note. Jenna's apartment was 4 blocks from the school. Our mother's house was on the other side of town. The cafe, my cafe, was between the school and Mom's house. If Jenna had left at 7:20 driving, she could have reached any of those places before things got bad. I don't know, I said. But she didn't come to me. She didn't go to Mom. Mom said she couldn't reach her. She just sent a photo and disappeared. Maybe she went to get something, Gerald said. Or someone. There's no one. It's just us. Me, her, Mom. Dad's been gone since I was 12. Gerald was quiet. Then, people do strange things when they know something's ending. Not always the thing you'd expect. I didn't answer. I took out my phone and looked at the photo again. The empty bus, the extended stop sign, the open emergency exit. Jenna had seen this and known. Before anyone else in our town, before the alerts, before the videos. My sister had looked at an empty bus on a Tuesday morning and understood what it meant. And she'd told no one but me, in a language I hadn't spoken. By noon, our 23 had become 31. People kept arriving, not a flood, but a steady trickle. A couple with a teenage son who'd driven from the neighborhoods east of Route 7. A postal carrier still in uniform, who'd abandoned her truck when something dead-eyed followed her off a porch. 3 college students who'd been on their way to the state university 40 miles north and turned back when the highway became impassable. Each arrival brought information, and each piece of information was worse. The postal carrier, her name was Rochelle, told us the neighborhoods along Sycamore were gone. Not destroyed, just populated by things that weren't people anymore. She estimated she'd seen 30 to 40 of them in a 6-block radius. They were slow, they didn't run. But they didn't stop either, and they seemed drawn to sound. The college students had seen the highway, a pileup on the interstate entrance ramp, not vehicles hitting each other. But vehicles stopped because their drivers had exited and never returned. Doors hanging open for a half-mile. A few of the stopped cars still had people inside, alive, trapped by the gridlock, honking their horns. The students had watched from the overpass as the honking drew shapes out of the tree line. Dennis, who'd been in the truck bed, turned out to be exactly as useful as his profession suggested. By 1 p.m., he'd gotten the station's backup generator running, restored power to the communications room, and connected the radio to a rooftop antenna he'd found in the storage closet. What came through the radio was fragmented but consistent. Emergency broadcasts on a loop. No live voices. Instructions to shelter in place. References to a Class 3 biological event that meant nothing to any of us. No local channels, no police dispatch, no fire coordination. Just the loop. That means there's no one managing response, Dennis said. Either they're overwhelmed or they're gone. Gerald said, or they've pulled back to a perimeter and we're inside it. This possibility, that we might be in a contained zone, sealed off, left to resolve itself, sat in the room like a physical weight. Nobody spoke for 10 seconds. I was in the kitchen when Patricia found me. She'd been in the bunk room with the children for hours. Her face had the luminous fatigue of someone running on pure adrenaline. "We need to talk about food," she said. "I know. We have enough water for today. Maybe tomorrow if we ration. The protein bars are gone. The kids ate them all, which is fine. But 31 people, Maya. And more might come. More will definitely come. So what do we do?" I stared at her. I wanted to say, "Why are you asking me?" I was a dropout, a cafe worker. I had no skills, no training, no plan. I'd followed my sister's breadcrumbs to these children, and now people were looking at me like I'd made a decision rather than just moved forward because guilt was pushing me from behind. But Patricia was looking at me, and I realized that leadership in crisis isn't claimed or earned or appointed. It's what happens when someone asks you a question, and you answer it instead of deflecting. "The grocery store on Oak is 2 blocks south," I said. "If we go now, daylight, we can take the truck, load up, and be back in 20 minutes. "Who goes?" "Me, Dennis. Gerald, if he'll go." "I'll go," Gerald said from the doorway. Of course he was listening. "And the boy, Cole, he's quick. He's 16. I was 16 in 1969 and I worked on a tobacco farm and drove a truck without a license. He'll be fine." This was not sound logic, but Gerald said everything with such flat certainty that arguing felt like arguing with gravity. I nodded. 20 minutes, Patricia said. "If you're not back in 20 minutes. "Then don't open the door," I said. And I meant it. I had learned that from the note on room 204. You do what you can, you leave instructions, and then you go. Jenna had taught me that this morning from an absence. The Oak Street grocery was a small IGA, independent single-story flat concrete roof. Gerald drove, Dennis rode shotgun. Cole and I were in the bed, Cole with his tire iron, and me with a fire axe from the station that was too heavy for me to swing effectively, but made me feel like I had a vote in my own survival. 2 blocks, maybe 40 seconds of driving. The streets were empty in the eerie, specific way I was learning to read. Parked cars that should have people in them, stop signs obeyed by no one, a baby stroller tipped on its side near a mailbox. We saw one figure, a woman in a bathrobe walking the center line of Oak Street with the cadence of a wind-up toy winding down. Gerald gave her wide berth. She didn't turn. The IGA parking lot held 3 cars and a shopping cart corral. The front windows were intact. The automatic doors were closed, no power, or the sensor had timed out. Dennis grabbed a crowbar from Gerald's toolbox, and they pried the doors apart. The smell hit us immediately. Refrigerated meat beginning to turn in units that had lost power. Under that, something sharper, chemical. I recognized it after a moment. Floor cleaner, industrial, recent. Someone had mopped. "Hello?" Gerald called into the dim store. Overhead fluorescents off, but emergency lighting near the exits gave a gray-green visibility. The aisles stretched ahead in neat rows. No answer. "Fast," Gerald said. "Water, canned food, medicine aisle. Grab bags from the register area. Don't go further than you can see." We split into pairs. Gerald and Dennis took the canned goods aisle. Cole and I went for water and medicine. I grabbed a handbasket and then dropped it for a shopping cart. Speed mattered, but so did volume. Cole loaded cases of bottled water onto the cart's lower rack while I swept the medicine aisle. Ibuprofen, bandages, antibiotic ointment, children's Tylenol, everything my arm could reach. "Maya," Cole said. His voice was the voice of someone trying very hard not to make the sound he wanted to make, which was a scream. I looked where he was looking. At the end of the aisle, the back wall, where the pharmacy counter jutted out, someone was standing. They weren't facing us. They were facing the wall, forehead pressed against the drywall as if listening to something on the other side. A man in a green apron, store employee. He was motionless except for a fine tremor in his hands that made his fingers tick against his thighs. "Don't move," I breathed. "Don't make noise." Cole's hand tightened on the tire iron. We were 30 feet from the man. The cart between us was half loaded, its wheels the loudest thing in the building. I put my hand on the cart's frame to steady it and slowly, inch by inch, began backing it up. The right front wheels squeaked. The man's head turned 90 degrees. Not his body, just his head, the way the cyclists had on Millbrook Road, that locked neck rotation. His eyes found us. They were bloodshot to the point of being entirely red, no white remaining. And they focused on us with the fixed intensity of a predator that doesn't need to rush because it never gets tired. He opened his mouth. What came out wasn't a moan or a scream or a word. It was a click, a rapid, percussive clicking, like a tongue hitting the roof of a mouth at mechanical speed, like echolocation, like a signal. From somewhere else in the store, 2 aisles over, maybe 3, another clicking answered. "Run," I said. We ran. I abandoned the cart. Cole didn't. He grabbed 2 cases of water, one under each arm, and sprinted with them. The clicking behind us accelerated, and I heard the slap of feet on tile. Not running, but that fast walk, that wrong-paced stride. And then another set, converging. Gerald and Dennis met us at the front, already moving, their arms loaded with bags stuffed with cans. Gerald saw our faces and didn't ask questions. He shoved us out the pried-open doors, and Dennis jammed the crowbar between the door handles as we cleared them, creating a bar that would hold for seconds at best. In the truck, engine starting, pulling out. 40 seconds back to the fire station. The bay door going up, Sujin operating the chain. And us inside, and the door going down, and the sound of our breathing filling the bay like something physical. "How many?" Gerald asked. 2 that I saw, maybe more. "They communicate," Cole said. He was still holding both cases of water. His arms were shaking. "Did you hear it? That sound?" One made it, and the other answered. They talked to each other. That night was the first night. 31 people in a building designed for a volunteer crew of 12. The children slept in the bunk room, 4 to a cot, the rest on folded turnout gear laid on the floor like mats. The adults rotated between the kitchen, the communications room, and the bay. No one slept deeply. Sounds from outside arrived in intervals. Distant car alarms cycling through their patterns, a dog barking for an hour and then stopping mid-bark. And twice, at 11 p.m. and again at 2 a.m., the clicking. Multiple sources. Passing. Not approaching our building, but moving along Route 7 in what Dennis called a patrol pattern. Though he admitted he was probably projecting human logic onto something that had none. I sat in the communications room at midnight, listening to the emergency loop and thinking about Jenna. I kept returning to the same calculation. She'd sent the photo at 6:47. She'd left the school at 7:20. 33 minutes in which she'd seen an anomaly, recognized its meaning, driven to work, moved 16 children to safety, written a note, and departed. 33 minutes of competent, decisive, selfless action. Then nothing. Where do you go when you've done your duty? And you know the world is ending? Our mother's house? No. Mom said she hadn't come. My apartment? No, I'd been at work. Her own apartment? Maybe, but why not answer her phone? Why not text me after the photo? Why, I'm sorry. I kept circling back to those two words. I'm sorry. Not I'm okay. Not I'm going to. Not meet me at. Just apology. What if she'd known she was already compromised? The thought arrived fully formed at 12:34 a.m., and I couldn't dismember it once it was there. The bus had been from her route, the bus that brought her students. What if she'd encountered whatever had emptied it? What if the photo was taken after contact? What if she'd felt something beginning in her body? That twitching Rochelle described, that gray progression, and her 33 minutes of heroism weren't the actions of someone with a future, but the final burst of someone spending their last reserves. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I can't stay. I'm sorry I can't explain. I'm sorry I'm leaving you without a goodbye, because if I stay, I'll become something that hurts people, and I won't do that inside a school. I pressed my hands against my face until I saw colors. I didn't cry. I should have cried. But the thing inside me that would have produced tears was frozen under the new coldness. And crying felt like a luxury belonging to someone who still had uncertainty. I didn't have uncertainty anymore. I had a theory that explained every data point, and I hated it with my entire body. Sujin found me in the communications room at 1 a.m. She sat in the other chair without speaking and let 2 minutes pass. You think she's dead, she said, not a question. I think she knew she was going to turn. I think she left so she wouldn't hurt anyone. That's Maya. You don't know that. No, I don't. But it's the only explanation that matches. Why leave? Why not call? Why apologize? She wasn't saying goodbye to me because she was choosing to go somewhere else. She was saying goodbye because she was choosing to go nowhere. She walked into the woods, or she drove to the lake, or I stopped. Sujin was quiet. Then, even if that's true, even if, what does it change about what you do now? Nothing. It changed nothing about what I did now. 16 children still needed water and food and safety. 31 people still depended on decisions being made. My sister's absence was a fact, not an instruction. Except it felt like an instruction. It felt like she'd handed me something by vanishing. A responsibility I'd never asked for. That I was grotesquely unqualified for. That I couldn't refuse, because refusing it meant her sacrifice had no inheritor. It changes nothing, I said. Then come sleep. I didn't sleep. Morning brought two things, clarity and conflict. The clarity was light. Actual daylight showing us the station's perimeter, the empty street, the absence of immediate threat. The conflict was a man named Ray Houston, who'd arrived at 4 a.m. with his wife and 2 teenage sons, and who, by 7 a.m., had decided he was in charge. Ray was 46, barrel-shaped, wearing a camouflage jacket and carrying a hunting rifle he'd brought from his truck. He was loud in the way certain men are loud, not angry, just volumetric, filling every space with the assumption that his voice mattered more because it was bigger. His wife, Carol, was quiet and careful and watched him the way you watch weather you can't control. "We need to fortify," Ray announced at the kitchen table, where Gerald, Dennis, Patricia, and I were eating canned peaches with our fingers. "Board the windows, set watches, establish a chain of command." Gerald looked at him mildly. "We've already set watches. Dennis and I rotate with Maya and Cole. Windows don't need boarding. They're impact-rated glass. This is a fire station." "I'm talking about real security. I've been hunting for 30 years. I know threat assessment. Who's been making the calls here?" Nobody answered immediately because the answer was complicated. Gerald made logistical decisions. I made choices about the children. Dennis handled mechanical problems. Patricia managed bodies in space. Who slept where, who ate when. It was distributed, wordless, functional. It's been collaborative, Soo-Jin said. Ray made a sound that wasn't quite a laugh. Collaborative. Right. You've got 30+ people in here, including kids, and no single person responsible. That's how people die. Nobody's died, I said. He looked at me, really looked, up and down, assessing. I watched him calculate my age, my size, my authority. I watched him dismiss me. You're the one who drove to the school, right? Good job. But getting lucky once isn't leadership. Gerald set his peach can down with a specific gentleness that I'd begun to recognize as his anger response. Ray, you arrived 4 hours ago. You're welcome here, everyone is. But nobody appointed you and nobody's going to. I'm not asking to be appointed. I'm saying someone needs to step up and I'm qualified. Qualified how? Dennis asked. You hunt deer. These aren't deer. They're slower than deer. And they're people, I said. Some of them are people we might know. Ray leaned back in his chair. They're not people anymore, sweetheart. The sooner everyone here understands that. Don't call me sweetheart. The table went silent. Ray studied me again with that calculating look. Carol put her hand on his arm, a practiced gesture, reflexive, smoothing. He shook it off. Fine, he said. Do it your way. When it goes wrong, I'll be here. He stood and walked to the bay where his sons, Brent and Kyle, 16 and 14, were sitting on his truck's tailgate cleaning a second rifle he'd apparently brought for one of them. Carol stayed at the table for a moment, looking at the rest of us with an expression I'd later understand was gratitude, disguised as embarrassment. He means well, she said. Patricia said, I'm sure. The conflict wasn't resolved. It was deferred, which is different. And I knew even then that deferred conflicts collect interest. Ray represented something I'd encounter again and again in the coming days. The person who arrives after the structure is built and immediately begins undermining it because they weren't consulted. Not evil, not incompetent, just oriented toward authority as a possession rather than a function. But he had a rifle. And we didn't. And in the math of this new world, that imbalance would eventually speak louder than any consensus we'd built. Day 3, 44 people in the station. The trickle hadn't stopped. It had actually increased as word spread through whatever surviving network people maintained. Someone told someone who told someone that the fire station on Route 7 had water and walls, and someone organizing things. We'd become a destination. And I didn't know how to feel about that except heavy. The children had normalized in the specific way children do, not accepting the situation as safe, but accepting it as reality, which is a different and more durable adaptation. They'd created routines without adult instruction. A girl named Destiny had organized a quiet time system, where the 16 Millbrook students took turns being the one who got to cry, not out of cruelty, but out of pragmatism. Only one person crying at a time kept the volume down. They'd learned from whatever Jenna had told them about sound. I watched them and saw my sister's fingerprints everywhere. In their discipline, their self-organization, their preternatural calm. She'd given them 2 things in 33 minutes, a survival structure and a mythology. Someone will come. They'll know the cat's name. She'd made me into a figure of salvation before I'd even left the cafe. She'd trusted me to become what she needed me to be. And I'd done it. Late, ignorant, propelled by guilt instead of clarity. But I'd done it. Did that mean she knew me better than I thought? Or that she'd simply had no other option? The food situation was critical. Our grocery run had yielded maybe 2 days of supplies for the group. Canned vegetables, soup, rice. But with 44 mouths, even rationing gave us hours, not days. Dennis proposed a second run, this time to the larger Kroger a half-mile west. Gerald agreed, but insisted on a larger team. Himself, Dennis, Ray, who had the rifle, Cole, and, Ray insisted, his older son Brent. "He's 16, I said. The same objection I'd made about Cole, echoing back at me. "And he can shoot," Ray said. "Better than most adults I know." I didn't want this. I didn't want Ray's son out there with a rifle. I didn't want anyone out there. But the calculus was brutally simple. 44 people needed food, or 44 people started dying in 3 days. And Ray, for all his posturing, was the only person among us who'd actually killed a moving target before, even if that target had been a deer and not a former human being. 20 minutes, I said. The same rule. If you're not back, you don't open the door, Ray finished. He almost smiled. You're consistent. I'll give you that. They left at 10 a.m. The bay door went up, the truck went out, the door came down. I stood at the communications room window, the only one with a sight line to Route 7, and watched them disappear west. They were back in 14 minutes. The truck screamed into the lot. Gerald laying on the horn, 3 short bursts, our signal for open now, and Sujin hit the chain. They backed in fast. The door went down. The truck bed was loaded. Cases of water, canned food, bags of rice, a medical kit from the pharmacy section. Enough for a week, maybe more. But that wasn't what hit me. What hit me was their faces. Gerald got out of the cab and walked to the kitchen sink and turned on the water and washed his hands for a long time. Dennis sat on the truck's bumper and put his head between his knees. Cole came to me, walked directly to me, and said, "The Kroger had people inside, live ones. They were already dying." Dying how? Starving. They'd locked themselves in 2 days ago and couldn't get out because the infected were in the parking lot. We got them out. 3 of them. The rest wouldn't leave. How many was the rest? 11. I closed my eyes. They wouldn't leave. They said outside was worse. They said at least they knew what was inside the store. The infected in there were locked in the break room. Someone had sealed them in. They said as long as the break room held. He stopped, swallowed. Maya, the break room wasn't going to hold. I could see the door bowing. 3 new people entered the station. A man in his 60s with a bandage on his arm that worried me. A young woman clutching a gallon of milk she'd taken from the store like a talisman. A child, maybe 6, holding the young woman's hand and looking at nothing. Our number was 47. The man with the bandage was named Arthur. The young woman was his granddaughter, Priya. The child was Priya's neighbor's daughter, June, whose parents Priya had watched through her apartment window as they walked into the street and didn't come back. Arthur's bandage concerned me, for obvious reasons. Yolanda, our vet tech, examined it while Patricia kept the children in the bunk room and away from the question it raised. "It's not a bite," Arthur said immediately, seeing our faces. "I cut it on a shelf in the store, reaching for something and caught it on a metal bracket." Yolanda unwrapped it carefully. Underneath, a linear laceration, clean-edged, consistent with slicing rather than tearing. No tooth marks, no bruising pattern that suggested a mouth. She cleaned it, applied antibiotic ointment from our supply, and rebandaged it. "It's a cut," she confirmed. The relief in the room was physical, a collective exhale that moved through every adult present. But the question had been asked, and now it lived among us. What do we do when it's not a cut? What happens when someone arrives with marks that aren't clean-edged? Ray, predictably, had an answer. "Anyone who comes in gets checked, every inch. If there's a bite." "Then what?" I interrupted. "We turn them away? We put them outside." "If they're bitten, they're going to turn. You've seen it. Everyone here has heard the stories." "We don't actually know the mechanism," Dennis said. "We don't know how fast, or if everyone." "Come on, man, we all know." The terrible thing was, he wasn't wrong. Everything we'd heard, from Rochelle, from the college students, from the radio's few fragments of medical advisory, pointed the same direction. Contact with bodily fluids, particularly through bites. Onset variable, but seemingly inevitable. No known reversal. "We check everyone," Gerald said. "That's reasonable. But we don't decide what to do about a bite until we're facing one. No policy about hypotheticals." "That's how you get killed," Ray said. "By the time you're facing it, it's too late to decide." "Maybe," Gerald said. "But I won't condemn a person who isn't here yet. That's my line." I watched this exchange and understood that Gerald and Ray represented two survival philosophies that could not coexist indefinitely. Gerald believed in moral flexibility. Meet each crisis fresh, decide in context. Ray believed in preemptive clarity. Decide the rules now so you're never paralyzed later. Both had logic, both had cost. I was supposed to be the tiebreaker. I could feel it, people's eyes moving to me when the two men spoke, waiting for me to weigh in as if I'd earned that position through anything other than being Jenna's sister and knowing where the library basement was. But I didn't weigh in. Not because I was unsure, I agreed with Gerald, but because I'd begun to notice something about my own behavior. Every decision I made was shadowed by the same question. What would Jenna do? I was borrowing her moral framework the way I'd borrowed her authority with the children. I wasn't leading, I was channeling. And I didn't know if that was sustainable, or if eventually I'd face something Jenna's template couldn't answer. That night, way Saturn, I sat on the bay floor with my back against the fire engine's wheel. And I typed a text message to my sister that would never send because the cell network had been dead for 36 hours. "You left me in charge of people I don't know how to protect. You made me into something by disappearing. Was that the plan? Was I always your backup? Or was I just the only one left?" I didn't delete it. I let it sit unsent. A message to no one, asking nothing that could be answered. Day 4 brought the choice I'd been dreading. Not the one about bites, but the one about doors. A group arrived at noon. 9 people in 2 cars from the south side of town. They'd been holed up in a church basement and left when their water ran out. Their leader, if you could call her that, was a woman named Teresa, who ran the church's food bank and had the commanding voice of someone used to organizing volunteers. "We heard there's a station taking people in," Teresa said at the bay door. "We have children with us. 3, and an elderly woman who can't walk well. 47 plus 9 was 56. The station was designed for 12. We were already sleeping in shifts, using the bathrooms in rotation, rationing water to a cup per person per meal. Our Kroger haul would last 5 days at 47. At 56, it would last 4. "Let them in," I said to Gerald, who was manning the door. "Ray," from behind me. "We can't keep doing this." "They have children. Everyone has children. The whole town has children. We can't take the whole town. We're not taking the whole town. We're taking 9 people. And tomorrow, it'll be 9 more. And then 9 more. Where's the line, Maya? When does this building reach capacity, actual physical capacity, where people start suffocating? I turned to face him. He was holding his rifle. Not threatening, just holding it the way he always held it now, like an extension of his body. Carol stood behind him, and for the first time, she didn't look embarrassed. She looked like she agreed with him. The line is when I say it is, I said. Because I've been here since the beginning, and I haven't turned anyone away, and that's the precedent. That's not a line. That's a philosophy. Philosophies get people killed. Then they get people killed. I heard myself say it, and I was shocked. Not by the words, by the certainty behind them. I wasn't channeling Jenna. Jenna would have calculated, compromised, found a middle path. I was being something else, something newer, something that had grown in the space her absence created. I was choosing open, not because it was safe or smart or sustainable, but because the alternative, turning away 3 children and a woman who couldn't walk, was a person I refused to become. Not wouldn't, refused. The distinction mattered. One is passive, the other is war. Gerald opened the door. Teresa's group entered. 56 people. Ray watched them come in. He didn't leave. He didn't threaten. But something shifted in his posture. A settling, a decision. Carol touched his arm, and this time he let her. That night, after Teresa's group was settled, the elderly woman, whose name was Midge, installed in the one proper cot we had left. Patricia found me in the kitchen. "You know he's not entirely wrong," she said. "I know. This building has a limit. We'll hit it." "I know. So what happens then?" I looked at my hands. They were rough. 3 days of hauling water and opening cans and gripping the fire axe had changed their texture. They didn't look like the hands of someone who made lattes. "Then we find somewhere bigger," I said. "Or we send groups out to satellite locations. Or I don't know, Patricia. I don't have a master plan. I just know that every time I think about closing that door, I think about Jenna standing in a hallway at 7:15 in the morning, deciding which of her students to save. And she chose all of them. She fit 16 children into a room built for equipment storage. She didn't calculate who was worth it. She also left," Patricia said gently. I stared at her. The words hit me in the sternum. She saved them, and she left? That's not a complete model, Maya. She was right, and I didn't know what to do with her being right, because the part Jenna skipped, the staying, was the part I was living, and I had no template for it. Day 6, 56 people. We'd settled into a rhythm that felt fragile but functional. Meal rotations, sleep shifts, morning supply checks, afternoon perimeter observations from the communications room window. The children had absorbed Teresa's 3 into their collective, destiny extending her crying rotation system with the administrative efficiency of someone born to organize small societies. Dennis kept the generator running. Yolanda treated minor injuries. Gerald maintained order through the quiet force of showing up early and speaking last. I existed at the center of something I hadn't built so much as inhabited. A role that grew around me like a vine around a post. People asked me questions. Not Gerald, not Ray, not Patricia. Me. Where should we put the new people? Should we send another supply run? What do we do about the bathroom schedule? 56 people and their logistics, landing on my shoulders not because I'd claimed them, but because I'd answered the first question and never stopped answering. Ray and I had reached a détente. He ran security, watches, Perimeter assessment. His sons positioned at the 2 windows with sight lines. I ran everything else. We didn't discuss this arrangement. It emerged through the physics of conflict avoidance. He wanted control, I wanted the door open, and we'd each gotten our territory. It was fragile. It would break. But not today. Today, the thing that broke was my theory about Jenna. Cole was monitoring the radio in the communications room. He'd taken to it, spending hours adjusting the frequency dial, searching for live voices. At 2 p.m., he called me in. "Listen," he said, static, then faintly a woman's voice. Repeating, "This is Volunteer Coordinator Reeves at the Dunmore Agricultural Center. We have capacity for approximately 200 people. Clean water from the well system, defensible perimeter. Food stores from the autumn harvest storage. Anyone receiving this, Route 19 north to Dunmore Road. Follow signs for the Agricultural Center." Repeating. The voice was Jenna's. I didn't breathe. Cole looked at me with wide eyes. He didn't know Jenna's voice, but he knew her last name and he could see my face. "That's her," I said. "That's my sister." The message looped. I listened to it 4 times. Her voice was calm, measured, professional. Volunteer Coordinator Reeves. She'd given herself a title. She was at the Dunmore Agricultural Center, a facility I vaguely knew of, maybe 20 miles north on Route 19. Some kind of county extension campus with barns and greenhouses and a well system. She was alive. She wasn't turned. She hadn't walked into the woods. She was 20 miles north, coordinating a shelter, broadcasting on a radio frequency, saving people on a scale that dwarfed my 56. Everything I'd believed for 4 days collapsed. The theory that had sat in me like a stone, that she'd been bitten, that the photo was a farewell, that "I'm sorry" meant I'm dying, disintegrated. She was alive, and she was working, and she was not here. "She didn't come for me," I said. Cole was quiet. "She's 20 miles away, running a shelter for 200 people, and she didn't come for me. She didn't come for our mother. She went north, and she set up a system. And she broadcast it on the radio instead of driving 12 minutes to the cafe where I work every single day." "Maybe she tried," Cole said. "Maybe the roads." "She left at 7:20. Nothing was blocked at 7:20. I know because we drove at 8:40 and the roads were passable. She had time. She chose not to." The coldness I'd been carrying since reading her note thickened into something else, something with edges. Not grief, not confusion, understanding. Jenna had assessed the situation, calculated where she could be most effective at the largest scale, and deployed herself there. She'd saved 16 students because they were in front of her. She'd sent me a photo, not as a goodbye, not as a cry for help, but as a notification, a piece of data. She'd trusted that I would see it and eventually figure things out, and she'd gone to do her own work. She hadn't chosen me because she'd chosen everyone. I didn't tell the group about the broadcast until the next morning. I needed a night to sit with it, to dismantle my grief and rebuild it as something I could carry without cutting myself. Jenna was alive. That was good. Jenna had a shelter with capacity. That was good. Jenna had chosen effectiveness over loyalty. I didn't know what that was. Not betrayal exactly. Not pragmatism exactly. Something in between that I didn't have vocabulary for. In the morning, I gathered the adults in the kitchen. Gerald, Dennis, Patricia, Sue Jin, Ray, Carol, Yolanda, Teresa, Rochelle, and the college students. The core decision-making group that had emerged through presence and persistence. "There's a shelter north of here," I said. "The Dunmore Agricultural Center, 20 miles on Route 19. They have well water, food stores, defensible structures, and capacity for 200. They're broadcasting on emergency frequency. Relief moved through the room like a wave. "Who's running it?" Gerald asked. I paused. "My sister." No one spoke for a moment. Patricia's eyes found mine. She understood immediately what this meant, what it cost me. "Then we go," Dennis said. 20 miles that's an hour on foot if we have to walk, much less in vehicles." "We have vehicles," Ray said. "My truck, Gerald's truck, the van, the Hyundai. Wait, the Hyundai left. Okay, 3 vehicles. We can do 2 trips, maybe 3. "The road might not be clear," Gerald said. "Route 19 runs through farmland north of town," I said. "Less density. Fewer people means fewer infected. It's our best option." "When?" Teresa asked. I looked at Gerald. He looked at me. "Today," I said. "This afternoon. Daylight. We load up and go." The next 4 hours were organized chaos. Packing supplies, loading vehicles, explaining to 16 children, now 19 with Teresa's additions, that we were moving again. Destiny's rotation system was suspended. Everyone was allowed to cry simultaneously for the duration of packing, and several did. Lily asked Patricia if this place would be permanent, and Patricia said, "I hope so, baby." And I heard in her voice the same exhaustion I felt. The fatigue of conditional safety, of shelter that's always temporary. We organized into 3 vehicle loads. Gerald's truck, Gerald, Dennis, Ray, Brent, and supply cargo. The van, cold driving, me in the passenger seat. 19 children filling the rows behind us, with Patricia and Soo Jin managing them. Second trip for everyone else, with Gerald returning after the first load. At 2 p.m., I stood in the bay looking at the fire station that had been our world for 6 days. The cots, the kitchen, the radio. The spot on the bay floor where I'd typed a message to my sister that would never send. "Ready?" Gerald said from the truck. I nodded. We opened the bay door one final time. Sunlight filled the space, clean, ordinary, indifferent to everything happening beneath it. I climbed into the van. Cole started the engine. Gerald's truck pulled out first, and we followed. Route 7 to Route 19. North. 20 miles to my sister, who was alive and effective, and had chosen the world over me. I was bringing her 56 people because that's what she'd asked for on the radio. Not by name, not personally, but categorically. Anyone receiving this. I was anyone. After 23 years of being her specific sister, I was anyone. And I was bringing her an army of people I'd kept alive, with nothing but open doors and stubbornness. I wondered if she'd be proud. I wondered if she'd be surprised. I wondered if she'd apologize. I wondered if I'd accept it. Route 19 was passable. Not clear. Twice we navigated around abandoned vehicles, and once Gerald stopped to push a sedan off the road with his truck's bumper. But passable in the way that mattered, meaning we could move forward. The farmland on either side stretched flat and green and empty. Winter wheat just beginning to show in the fields. And the openness was both relief and exposure. Nothing could hide. But we couldn't hide either. 7 miles in, we saw our first cluster. 15 or 20 figures in a field to our right, a quarter mile from the road. They were standing in a loose group, motionless, facing different directions. Not moving, not feeding. Just standing, like unpowered machines waiting for a signal. One of them turned its head as we passed, that horrible camera rotation, but didn't follow. "They're grouped," Dennis said on the walkie Gerald had given us. "Why are they grouped?" Nobody answered. We drove faster. At mile 12, Route 19 crossed a small bridge over a creek, and on the far side, someone had built a barricade. Not a haphazard one. A deliberate construction of vehicles and farming equipment arranged in a V-shape that funneled traffic into a single lane. At the funnel's narrow point, 2 people stood with shotguns. Gerald stopped. I could see him through the van's windshield, hands visible on his steering wheel. One of the armed figures approached his window. They spoke. I couldn't hear what. Then the figure looked past Gerald's truck to the van, saw 19 children's faces in the windows, and stepped back. The barricade opened. We passed through. 3 miles later, the Dunmore Agricultural Center appeared. A complex of metal-roofed buildings, a large greenhouse, a water tower, and a white farmhouse, all surrounded by livestock fencing that had been reinforced with shipping pallets wired to the posts. A hand-painted sign on the gate read, "Dunmore Shelter All Welcome Check-In at White House." Gerald pulled through the gate. I followed in the van. The grounds inside were alive. People moving with purpose, carrying things, talking, children playing in an open area near the greenhouse. Tents had been erected between buildings. A cooking fire burned in a steel drum. It looked like society. Imperfect and improvised, but functional. I parked the van and got out. The children pressed against the windows, looking at a world that had people in it. People who were upright and purposeful and uninfected. Patricia opened the sliding door, and Lily spilled out first, running toward the open space like she'd been released from a cage. I walked toward the White House. My legs felt strange, light and disconnected, as if the ground weren't quite accepting my weight. The front porch had a folding table with a sign-in sheet and a woman organizing papers. I climbed the steps. The front door opened. Jenna stood in the doorway. She was thinner. Her hair was pulled back. She wore a flannel shirt I didn't recognize, and jeans with dirt on the knees. She looked at me, and her face did something I'd never seen it do. It crumpled. The competence, the control, the 10,000 organizational tasks visible behind her eyes. All of it collapsed for 2 seconds into raw, human, unsorted emotion. "Maya," she said. I stood on the porch. I didn't move toward her. I didn't speak. I held her gaze and let her see what was in me. The anger, the grief, the unwilling love. The 4 days of believing she was dead. The 6 days of becoming someone I didn't recognize. The 56 people I'd carried here like a dowry to prove I was worth coming back for. "I brought your students," I said. "All 16. She put her hand over her mouth. "And 39 others. Gerald's going back for the rest." She came down the steps. She reached for me, arms extending in the gesture of embrace, and I stepped back. 1 step, enough. Her hands fell. "Not yet," I said. Not yet." She nodded. She understood. That was the worst part. She understood immediately. The way she'd understood the empty bus, the way she understood everything before I did. She saw the shape of my anger and its origin and its justification, and she didn't argue or apologize or explain. She just accepted it like weather. "Okay," she said. "Not yet. 3 weeks at Dunmore. My sister runs the shelter like she ran her classroom, with systems, patience, and the quiet assumption that people will rise to expectations. She was right to come here. The Agricultural Center's resources have sustained 212 people through the worst of it. The well works, the greenhouse feeds us, the barricades hold. She saved more people by choosing scale over intimacy. I know this. I accept it. And I am still furious. Not because she left me, because she was right to leave me. Because I was never the priority and shouldn't have been. Because the math of crisis is ruthless, and my sister speaks math fluently, and I speak something else. Something slower. Something that opens doors without calculating what enters through them. We work side by side now. She manages logistics, I manage people. The emotional infrastructure, the soft labor she was never built for. We've become complementary in a way we never were before, when she did everything and I followed. She said sorry once. I said I know. That's where we've left it. The convoy I resented is my family now. Gerald, Cole, Patricia, and Lily. Dennis. Even Ray, who runs perimeter security with a competence I can't deny. They need me, not my sister, me. And that is new. That is enough.